Hello, welcome listeners. Welcome to Kyle and Cody's Called CinemaCast. I'm Kyle.
I'm Cody.
Yeah. This week we're doing a movie by the guy that killed Brandon Lee.
Oh, I didn't put that together.
Yeah. Okay. So I may be joking. I don't want to get like sued or anything, but not that like if he's listening to this, I'll be actually impressed. But no, I mean, yeah, he almost certainly did not kill Brandon Lee. We're doing Dark City by the director. What's his name again? Why do I not open these things up in time? By Alex Proyas, who directed also The Crow, the infamous film where Brandon Lee died. But yeah, this is his the film that he did immediately after that. Um, so that's something. Uh, but yeah, as far as I know, he's not literally responsible for the death of Brandon Lee. Although that story, for those of you who don't know, is on the set of The Crow. Someone had apparently loaded a real bullet into a machine gun and fired it at Brandon Lee and killing him. But this is the movie that came out after that. Proyas's third film, third feature length film. Third feature length film after the third one being a lesser known thing. But yeah, this is a 1998 film that's didn't really make its money back. Its box office is a literal hair above what the budget is, but as listeners will know, you need to double your money in order to make your money back. So, in actuality, this movie lost $10 million. This film got a big push from Roger Ebert is a big proponent of this film, or was anyway. Like he actually did a commentary on one of the DVD releases because he was such a big fan of it. And I mean, sometimes critics do having a critic really push your work is really important, and this film has kind of survived partially because of that. Another claim to fame is this film came out a year before The Matrix, and there's some similar plot points. A lot of people say like there are some people that like overstate that this is like that The Matrix copied some stuff on this, which isn't true because like uh this movie is just so different, and B is just like really not accurate. Like there's a couple like they both of these films exist in like this artificial world that exists, and like they put people in and manipulate them to believe it's real. But beyond that, the plots are completely different. The methods of that are completely different. The Matrix did use some sets from this film, actually, but still.
Ultimately, I instantly stopped caring about this film because he apparently made like his first movie was called Spirits of the Air, Gremlins of the Clouds, and it's an Australian independent post-apocalyptic sci-fi adventure film. And I also like the premise that's written up on Wikipedia that absolutely gives you like no hints at the plot except for like very little. Um, Anyways, the poster's kind of cool. I'd watch this.
So, yeah, this film, written by Alex Proyas, Lem Dobbs, and David S. Goyer, who did some other stuff. He's done a bunch of scripts for movies. He wrote a bunch of the Dark Knight movies. He's credited as a writer on like a lot of like superhero movies. Actually, he like the first one being like the Nick Fury Agent of Shield movie. He wrote a bunch of the Blade movies, or wrote or co-wrote. The Dark Knight trilogies, Dark Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and he's only directed few films. The Third Blade, A Zigzag, The Invisible, and something called The Unborn, which God, I hope that's not what I think it is. He also is currently working on the science fiction television The Foundation, based on the Asimov works. Is that who writes it? Yes, Asimov. Asimov, the big famous Asimov series Foundation. But and then it stars Rufus Sewell as the main character John Murdoch. William Hurt plays Inspector Frank Bumstead. Kiefer Sutherland is in this movie, distantly related to Tommy Douglas. Another guy returning to the podcast, Richard O'Brien's of Rocky Horror Picture Show, plays one of the main villains. Ian Richardson plays the main villain. A bunch of other fancy actors in here. Jennifer Connelly plays the female lead. Yeah, pretty interesting cast list. This movie had some. I know one interesting anecdote I found about this was they didn't want to call it Dark City at first because they were afraid of it getting confused with the film Mad City, which I don't know why they were confused about that movie. This film did. That's maybe one of the few films that actually did way worse than this. Yeah, like that movie is lost $40 million. Weirdly enough, it had like a $50 million budget and lost 10 and only made 10. So, yeah, it's pretty big. It's won it got nominated for Hugo's. Just go to the yeah, it won, or it was nominated for a Hugo. It won stuff like no big awards really, but it won a Bram Stoker Award for Best Screenplay. It's got a few Australian film awards specifically because it was made in Australia, and Proyas is an Australian. It won a Saturn, although what it tied with Armageddon. Same with it tied with Armageddon for Best Science Fiction Film, and got nominated for like 5 other things. There was a little bit of a controversy within Hollywood. This isn't really like a outside of Hollywood thing, but they had some trouble getting all 3 writers credited, because that's Hollywood doesn't like you crediting more than 2, just because of reasons, so that people can get paid decently, I guess. Or whatever. But it's actually one of the few films out there that's really credited with 3 people, like officially credited as having 3 writers. But yeah, it's also just famous for.
It's weird because like Keith Sutherland's the only person I really recognize on this list. I thought I knew who William Hurt was, but I'm thinking of John Hurt. So, but it was actually interesting to go back through like some of the directors' information because I didn't realize that they the director did like knowing. He did a couple of movies that aren't great, but I recognize them at least. Like, and then yeah, David S. Goyer is apparently very prolific, and I think he did a lot of stuff for the Call of Duty franchises.
Alex Proyas, he isn't really. He directed the iRobot, the iRobot movie, which I didn't mind too much, but he hasn't done. Yeah, his production slows actually pretty rapidly after this. Like the gap between this and his next movie, Garage Days, is 4 years, and then 2 years between that and iRobot, then 5 years between iRobot and Knowing, and then he doesn't direct another movie till 2016 with Gods of Egypt, which is notably terrible. Although he I was gonna say he directs more short films, but not really. He did like his last. He has like a short film, like one, two, three, four, five short films between 1980 and 1995, and then he doesn't direct another short film until 2019, and then he directs another one, which is actually something called Mask of the Evil Apparition, which is set in the Dark City cinematic universe, whatever that means. Might be that he wants to get a sequel out of this. He's directed a lot. No, again, yeah, he does. He doesn't get a lot of work nowadays, I guess. Which I don't know. He doesn't. He doesn't seem
Probably
to.
because knowing in God of Egypt is not great, especially coming off of like I didn't hate iRobot. I just don't remember it. That's all I remember is that it stars Will Smith and it has the
It made money though, so that's probably why he doesn't need to work. Like that movie did good box office reasonably. So that's probably helps him out. What did The Crow do? Because this movie didn't make money. Oh, The Crow did all right. Not huge numbers, but 94 million at the box office on a $23 million budget. That's amazing. That's actually really good, really damn good. That definitely something that would have gotten a lot of people longer careers, but unfortunately, just yeah. Also, like he's not like I think this movie's like a good leap and bound better than The Crow, which is his other best movie. But I don't think this movie's
so I hate
perfect.
to bring it up to you, but
Yeah.
the movie Knowing made on a 50 million budget made $216 million.
Oh
So
yeah. So that's
and
also
that movie was absolute ass.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy's doing fine for
I mean,
money.
it's not the worst. I think like Knowing, and then there was another one that came out roughly around the same time, 2012. All those like real, let's like give a lot of credence to some of the weirder conspiracy theories out there, like parts was kind of there was another one that came out just roughly in that time period where the M. Night Shyamalan movie about the trees that are causing people to commit suicide. What movie was that?
I have no idea. I didn't know that was a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it,
Um
it is absolutely awful. Yeah, I definitely butchered M. Night Shyamalan's name, but
but yeah, this guy I mean, yeah, it's weird. This is actually his box office bomb. Which is kind of a shame because this is his best. I think this is definitely his best movie. Um,
it was no The Happening, which was 2008 for
the
those
Mark
of you that
Wahlberg picture.
are interested. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, even in like an alternate universe where like the Crow didn't kill Brandon Lee, I think this is still like a way better movie. Because I think you do have to take points off any movie where like someone actually died filming it.
Somehow that actually made its money back.
The Crow?
Yeah, you definitely would probably get a bad rep in Hollywood, especially considering it was basically under your watch at that point in time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess, but he made a lot of money, but notably there's a gun in this there's two guns in this movie, but only one scene where like a guy fires a gun. And I don't know that this guy like I don't know that it doesn't seem like they let this guy near guns again. Really. I get
I guess there's definitely a big difference between the Brandon Lee situation and like the Alec Baldwin situation, right?
uh I don't know for sure. I don't want
Like
to
this
put
guy,
yeah.
like there's like he was. I don't want to say he could pass the buck off on somebody else, but like that doesn't necessarily completely fall under his wheelhouse of authority within the production. that would probably fall on like a set designer or a prop master, I guess, would probably be more likely than.
I can't say because I don't know. Like, obviously that scene did not make it into the movie, um, but like I can't say whether like what the situation is, and maybe on some level that is why he doesn't get more work. Because I know like there are guys that have like done less that get like blacklisted from Hollywood. I think there's like even a lesser
Mhm.
example where someone like shocked Adam Savage with like a car battery, and that guy's done. Like from Mythbusters. This was something to do with the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know the exact situation, but yeah, like you can like that is might be why he doesn't get as much work because it's sort of sparse for filmmaking. It just so happens that like 80% of his movies have made good money. Like I think what did Gods of Egypt do? I mean, Gods of Egypt failed, but it didn't fail
I mean,
bad.
really bad.
It I mean, the budget was 140 million and it made 150 million at the box office. So that's like 75 million to pull in. So that's a bit of a loss. And also people just didn't like give that movie much time. So, but yeah. But yeah, I think like this movie's got its two famous things about like it's directed by the same guy who did The Crow, which is a movie a lot of people love, and then that it has some. It was like a precursor to The Matrix, which I will say The Matrix is a way better movie than this.
No, so I really wouldn't call it a precursor to The Matrix,
Yeah, I
considering,
wouldn't
like, The
either. Yeah,
Matrix came out a year later. Like, there's definitely not enough time, or overlap to really be able to, draw a decent comparison there between the 2, 'cause,
yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about that too because that is kind of like that is a like it happens like close in the minds of people. Like it can be like maybe like there's something argument you can make of like this movie didn't make its money but it like a lot of people liked it, so it was just kind of in people's heads when like the Matrix came in. It's like, hey, I should give this other like weird science fiction film a chance. So maybe that's part of it, but I don't think, but yeah, I think a lot of that is sort of overstated. Like the Matrix would have been filming when this movie got released. So it's not as if this was like to capitalize on that. Although this might have had like some there might be some executive producing blood in there that's mixed in. But yeah, it is sometimes somehow a bit overstated, but I don't think that's like a unfavorable comparison. I don't think like The Dark City is a I think this is a pretty good movie. Like is it like like a really like it's if you find especially like if you're like of the mind that you find the Matrix goofy, which is understandable, like this might be the movie for you because this is a little, I mean it's goofy but in a different way. So this might be for some people their preferred movie. But yeah, I think the comparisons are somewhat I mean not unfair but not founded. I think into the plot because we've like talked a good bit about this and haven't mentioned anything about it. The movie opens with the camera pointed into the night sky, and eventually it points into this quick series of shots where like a lights flick, like waving back and forth over a bed, a bathroom. We see our main character in the tub, not wearing any like in the club, taking a bath in the tub, taking a bath. I maybe see Kiefer Sutherland, like the outline of the hat of Kiefer Sutherland's character in this scene. I'm not sure. He is revealed to have been in this room later in the movie. We see his clothes draped on a like clothes like a towel rack on the other side of the room, and he wakes up to see a to have with a little needle wound on his forehead, and he's like bleeding a little bit, but he doesn't appear to have any major scar on his forehead. It's revealed that he gets out of bed, he gets out of the tub as he wakes up, and wanders around this place. He puts on some of the clothes on the rack, and opens up the door and knocks into a goldfish, like a goldfish bowl that's just sitting on the floor for some reason. I don't know why they do this. Like they use it as like a method to like show something about this character, because he grabs this goldfish and its broken thing and puts it in his bathtub, bath water. Um, which yeah, that's to show that he would feel bad about killing the fish and that he'd save the fish, which is an interesting point for a little later. But
Do you not think that it has anything to do with the fact that he has goldfish memory literally throughout this whole entire movie?
oh, okay, just elaborate on that for me.
Well, like, I don't know, I'm just like English teacher minding it, and like the fact that he almost kills the goldfish in the opening scene is kind of indicative of like the overall feel of the movie, and the fact that goldfish notoriously lose their memory. He's
Ah,
also lost his memory,
he
but
emphasizes with the goldfish.
maybe I'm giving them like the director way too much credit in all actuality, and it's probably they're just like, we need a fish for this scene. What's closely available? And they're like, goldfish.
Hey, I don't think that's a bad read. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. Well, at least it's like at least this is the kind of sort of like undervalued foreshadowing, unlike like something that's like we're gonna reveal the plot to you in the first like 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, that's a thing we should mention. The original theatrical cut of this had a opening monologue, which I hate. But in the theatrical cut, they've gotten rid of it and actually add and like lengthened some scenes. But it's not like a big change. But yeah, so this movie is another thing that got improved when they cut out the opening monologue, which are scarcely ever good. Like I could count the number of good opening like monologues on like one hand, frankly. So that's a good thing happened. Yeah, I do also like that. Like another thing to that mind of like they do an establishing shot of like the sky. Establishing shots are a way of like establishing setting, and they do that as like a thing of like showing us the space essentially for the reveal later in the movie. Our main character finds a briefcase with a KH on it. He finds inside a postcard from a place called Shell Beach, which is a place I do not like to say the name of. It does not roll off the tongue. I kind of just want to call it Shell City, like from SpongeBob.
Shelby.
Yeah, I kind of want to call it Shell City from SpongeBob.
I've I've recently considered adopting a cat and naming him Gary so I can just quote SpongeBob at him for the rest of his life.
I've just named my cats. I've just numbered my cats. I just said cat 1, cat
I think
3,
ultimately that's the
cat
way
5,
to go.
cat 4. I don't know how many of those are still around. Farm cats, everybody. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a postcard from a guy uh named Carl, who has a last name. I forget what his last name is. But
uh
yeah,
Harris. Carl
Carl
Harris.
Harris, yes, who has sent this guy a postcard saying remember Shell Beach, and like yeah, come visit me sometime. Although the guy's not on Shell Beach, but anyway, we get some like flashbacks where he like sort of
Oh,
remembers stuff, but Go ahead.
Did we bring up the fact that Richard O'Brien's in this?
Yeah, I did briefly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just trying to like touch on them, like where we've seen all the people, and I mean, for those of you who don't know who Richard O'Brien is, he was in Rocky Horror as Riff Raff, which we've also done, along with Shock Treatment and Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, was he in that movie? I forget. I forgot.
Yeah, he was the bad rogue person that they meet in the
Ah.
maze, and they have to do the whole
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I sort of remember that. I don't know. I forgot about a lot about that movie. I
Yeah.
remember The Purge. That's about it.
I just know that they're doing a new one in like 2023
Yeah,
coming
it's
up
coming.
here
It's
pretty
coming here.
soon.
Yeah. Uh, Shame I can't go see it because Wizards of the Coast is trying to kill all the third party content. So I think I have to boycott it.
Yeah,
Sadly.
yeah, I haven't really looked into the whole like Wizard of the Coast controversy. I'm still mad at them for their whole we're gonna sell $1,000 proxy Magic the Gathering cards to you bullshit that they tried to pull earlier on this year. So I'm still angry about that before I even looked into the Dungeons and Dragons stuff.
See, we're flip side. We're both on the other side of this. I don't know anything. Like I had heard they did some bullshit with like 30th anniversary or Magic, but I haven't paid attention since like to Magic since like 2021.
Yeah, so they put out a booster box of like 15 cards, and there's like 4 packs in this booster box for $1,000. None of it's tournament legal. They're not actually cards. They're basically just cardboard at that point in time, and they charged $1,000 for it. So people might speculate that like some of the non-tournament legal cards are gonna like skyrocket in price. But the way I look at it is if I can go out and spend like $2.50 and get like 150 cards proxied for that much money, which is basically the exact same thing. You can print whatever card you want on it. Like, what's the purpose of going out and spending $1,000 to maybe pull one cool card like a Black Lotus that's not tournament legal, can't be used for whatever reason at that point in time? Basically, it'd go into a commander deck, and it like I'd like use it as a talking piece or something. It is just really scummy.
Yeah. On my end, Wizard the Dungeons and Dragons 5e has like an open gaming license where you can essentially use like post this in the back of a book, and then you can essentially publish your own expansion pack or like adventure for Dungeons and Dragons. But they were essentially Wizards essentially said like, oh yeah, we're gonna revoke that, and also if you make a lot of money on Kickstarter, you have to give us like 20% of it, and also the open gaming license is now void, so everything that currently exists would need to be taken off the market, and you'd have to pay us some amount of money. Some of this has been backed down on, but mostly the stuff they can't legally enforce. It seems like, but yeah, it's still an ongoing thing. They haven't, but they're essentially one D&D, the new D&D version is going to have like a not an open game license. It's going to have like something else, and they're going to do that corporate thing where they call it an open game license, despite the fact that it's not that.
How much do you think this was pushed by Vox Machinima coming fairly popular?
Um, it's
Popular enough to create their own television series, The Legends of Vox Machinima on Amazon Prime. If you haven't checked that out, it's really good. Awesome. Second season's coming out in like 3 days or 2 days, so definitely go check that out.
yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's less that actually, and more like they essentially like I heard some like stuff from people who know better, and like they're gonna do like essentially okay, they tried to do this with fourth edition too. Of course, D&D was a lot smaller back then, like a lot smaller. But they also tried to do this with fourth edition, and there's some similarities with what they were going to do there and what they're going to do now. There's like fourth edition D&D was supposed to have a virtual tabletop. One D&D is going to have a virtual tabletop, um, which to some extent does like would in theory require them to like format things certain ways. It's not a lot of sensical stuff, but also I think it's less actually Critical Role that gets their goats. It's more stuff like Pathfinder, which was essentially a reskin of the third edition of D&D that this company Paizo was essentially just allowed to put out because they had because it was under open game license. You could just legally do that. And also probably just like some rich guy wanting to get somebody else's monopoly money. That's all it is.
You can't really sit there and complain about, like, monopoly money at that point in time when you control half the fucking board. I mean,
Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast is literally like a powerhouse within the tabletop, like, role-playing RPG games, and, like, basically every tabletop RPG game can be somewhat accredited to the fact that D&D exists. Like, I don't think there was a game before that,
No, it was technically the first. There were
and
some like early knockoffs, which there's also like the whole like side tangent of this where like can D&D literally like enforce like the open game license is essentially like it's out there and like it's an agreement. It's basically a treaty saying like we're not going to fuck with people who make third party stuff, but it's never been proven in court that you can actually like whatever the D&D company is can actually prevent them from doing that. Like there's some legal argument that like, oh yeah, you can just do whatever you want, to an extent. But that is not borne out in court. Mostly because it's been small beans for the most part. Also, like a lot of the complaint is like essentially the third party stuff is just gives D&D money because you still need to buy a like player's handbook and stuff, and also like D&D only puts out so many books a year. So it's not competition. It's just adding on to something that you need to buy some Wizards products for anyway. And there's a really dubious. Yeah, go
and
ahead.
ultimately, I guess,
Go ahead.
like, how do you even boil that down anymore? Because considering, like, so many of, like, the fundamentals of tabletop RPG games is based around Dungeons and Dragons. So, like, if I, as a new system creator, like, want to incorporate D20s into my game, am I gonna have to go out of my way to pay D&D at that point in time? And I
That
mean, I guess
yeah, that is one of
it
the
just
questions.
seems kind of really shitty at that point in time to be like, oh yeah, for the first 20 years of this company's or 30 years of this company's inception, we're gonna finally just pull the plug on third party licensing. At least they're gonna make a huff of it, but yeah, I don't think anything's ever gonna come of it. I don't think they have the like they have the money to definitely throw it around, but I don't think they have a legal case to stand on. So,
Yeah, that's part of the reason why some of the backing down's happening. We found out a lot of this through like a leak, essentially. Um, but it
mm,
was like a leak of like, okay, we're essentially going to put this out. So they're going to do like we're still in limbo. This is an ongoing thing that has been going on for a week and a half yet at time of recording. But yeah, and there's also like this is also an issue that has never been solved in court. So there was some stuff in the 80s where like they had started to do like a court challenge, but it never like came to completion. So we don't know what the legal precedent is.
and I mean ultimately I think I'd like to know a little bit more about the case, and I'd like to do my own research on it before I start like making really hardcore decisions on where I stand on it. But like, um, did they at least throw out like a couple of examples? Because I can definitely see where they would be like, yeah, that's totally just a rip off of our game at that point in time. But
Not
like how
really.
much?
Like, well, there's like, if you wanted to
No.
go back to like
Okay.
the 80s, there's probably like, again, that would be at that point you're talking about like a totally different company actually. But there hasn't really been like a firm
Hmm.
examples. Their official statement essentially says they want to go after they want to prevent the invention of web3 stuff, i.e. NFTs and shit like that. And also like to prevent hate content, which, yeah, like right now there is some like, okay, Wizards can't really do anything to stop that necessarily. Although now that with the new license, they could in theory do it. But yeah, it's
I'm
like,
just wondering
yeah,
if that's
it's,
gonna
yeah.
affect like people who are using their content outside of just outside of like the intended context. So if I wanted to, for example, stream like a game of Dungeons and Dragons, do I have to pay my fair share over to Wizards of the Coast at that point in time or not? Yeah.
Currently, they are
Okay.
saying no. Um, Currently, I believe the answer to be no, but there was some question about that based on the reading of the first draft of this thing, or whatever leak of it, because that
Hmm.
was an open question. Again, that's also in like an area of like, can you even like? I don't think you can do that any more than you could take down like. I mean, they've tried, but you can't really like legally take down a lot of let's plays. So I think that's kind of under the same thing. But yeah, a lot of this is still up in the air too. But currently they are saying no, it's not
Hmm.
going to affect like streams. But there was some question of that in the beginning.
Or I mean, like, because I like Puffin Forest on YouTube. He goes in and he talks about his adventures on like in D&D and stuff like that. Like a lot of D&D content is good. So, I mean,
Yeah, it was they are backing down to some state like somewhat, but again, I think it's a lot of backing down on stuff that they can't actually enforce so far. A lot of the stuff that's like, okay, it could be legal that they could get away with this, is still going through. So, or it does seem to be going through. So, it's not a good situation either way.
well,
Anyway,
even if they weren't, yeah, like if they were just trying to big dick this and they're like, we're gonna leak this as a company, and make us look a little bit more threatening, maybe rehashes of Dungeons and Dragons stuff like that.
yeah, Wizards
But,
didn't
well,
leak
who
this
did?
act. Some journalist or like games journalist or whatever. Like they had she had
Okay,
gotten a hold of it. I think she works for Gizmodo. I think Gizmodo leaked it.
so it's a complete.
Yeah, they were sending
Okay,
this out to a few developers and whatnot.
so it wasn't planted, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, this isn't if Wizards had something to do with it, it doesn't it definitely has backfired on them because they have lost
Okay, maybe I'm just like straight up tinfoil hatting this.
yeah. Yeah, who knows. But anyway, on to the back to the review. Thank you for indulging us. So yeah, he wanders about this room and finds a dead woman with a little spiral of blood drawn over her boob. So that's a thing. He wanders out of the building. He wanders out of this room he's in. It's in like a hotel, and he wanders to the base floor where everyone's sleeping. There's just like a person sleeping in a phone booth, which is a thing from the 90 from before this century, where like you would go into the street and like make a phone call from it before they had cell phones. For those of you who don't know, I don't know how young our listeners are.
I remember using a payphone, so I mean, it's not that long ago. I mean, like, that payphone was ancient, but, like, there was still a payphone in my hometown growing up,
Yeah, they
um,
had them. Yeah, they
both
had
in
them
Moose
lying
Jaw
around. Yeah.
and Fort Capel. And I remember one day I didn't have a phone and I needed to call into work because I was feeling awful. So that's what I did. I literally walked from my house to this payphone, wrote down the number, and then called into work to leave a message on an answering machine stating that I wouldn't be in for work that day. So
I remember them. I don't know if I've ever used one.
I ultimately learned that I can make phone calls off my computer, and at
Mm.
that point in time, like, why get up and walk out? So,
I got my first cell phone in like 2009. So, but I was always in like anytime I needed to make a phone call, I was always in a place where like people would let me borrow their phone or whatever. So I guess, or I don't also don't
yeah.
call people ever. So, um, anyway, moving on. So as he's wandering about this place, he's like trying to get people's attention and wake them up. But at first I thought these guys were dead, but I guess no. After a bit, the clock strikes midnight, and everyone wakes back up. And he's just like, "Oh yeah, that's weird." And as he starts leaving the building, he gets a guy calls him from behind, and he's just like, "Hey, Mister, what's his name? I I have lost track of his name. Johnson, right? No,
John Murdoch.
Murdoch.
Sorry, I was muted. I was
Sorry.
I was sitting there
Yeah,
yelling into my mic like
yeah.
a kid yelling at the television. Like,
I was just thinking like I remember thinking during the movie and like Murdoch has got to be like the most common noir name. Like I don't
oh
know
yeah,
why. Yeah, like is it
isn't that the name of
Yeah, it's Daredevil.
Daredevil?
There's also a Murdoch Mysteries.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, I'm gonna look up Murdoch etymology. I can't remember. I think that's Irish, uh, Gaelic. Yeah, so that's yeah,
Well, probably.
yeah,
I
yeah. It's a Gaelic name, meaning sea warrior.
mean, I guess that kind of makes sense in context of the movie, but
But yeah, it's like a super common like detective name.
oh yeah.
Yeah, like I'll Google Murdoch and see what comes. Murdoch. Yeah, mysteries. Yeah, it's just like a weirdly common like detective name. Anyway, he gets called and he says, "Oh, Mr. Murdoch, you need to go you got a phone call from the automat, which is a thing where you go to a place and you put a it's like a vending machine. It's like a vending machine but a store, if that makes any sense. Yeah, it's like a like instead of like
Did
going in
not.
instead of going to a vending machine, you go into a thing that serves that purpose, but it is a brick and mortar store.
Yep.
Yeah.
That absolutely did not make sense to me as like, is this supposed to be like future science fiction like bullshit?
No,
Or
this
was
is
this actually a thing in the early 1998?
it's a thing. It's not from I'll Google it here. It's a thing. It's a real thing. I think it's more of a 50s thing. Yeah, it was invented in Germany in like it's invented in Berlin, Germany in like 1895 it says. It's yeah, I'm trying to figure out when it got popular. United States. It's a big thing. Is it Oh yeah, I'm reading a little bit of it here. It was essentially like their answer to fast food. It was like proto fast food. Like you'd go there and essentially it'd be under like a heat lamp for essentially. But essentially McDonald's came and ate these guys' lunch. Haha. Essentially food got too expensive for it and McDonald's style things got bigger. The big chain was Horn and Hardat, which eventually got seems to have been bought out by Burger King. Yeah, it was a precursor to fast food, essentially. But we just got
I
better at
guess it
stuff
kind of
after a
makes
while.
sense.
Yeah.
You can't steal things from
Yeah.
a store like this, I guess. Well, I mean, this guy can, but nobody else can apparently.
Yeah. They're still around occasionally. As like a nostalgia thing. I'm seeing like some pictures from like a couple in New York, one in like yeah, just yeah, but it was more of like a 30s thing, honestly. Seems like. It was all yeah, it was a more of a 30s and 50s thing. But yeah, so that's what an automat is. But it's also pointed out that later the city has a bunch of like anachronistic stuff. So like a lot of stuff's taken from a bunch of different time periods, which makes sense given the explanation for this place we get later. But yeah, the automat left a message for Mr. Murdoch saying he left his wallet at the automat when he went to get some food there. So he needs to go get that. And the hotel clerk says, "Well, good, you better do that because you owe me money, or else I'm not. I'm going to kick you out because you've been here for 3 weeks and haven't really paid." So yeah, so Murdoch goes to go get his wallet. In the meantime, he goes to leave, and in the meantime, he gets after that, a couple guys come in, big pale looking guys with hats, come into this place. These characters are called the Strangers, which we'll learn a little bit later. So the Strangers go up to the hotel clerk and put him to sleep so that they can like have their way with his records, and they find out where Mr. Murdoch where Murdoch is staying. Notably, that he's only listed as J Murdoch, so Murdoch doesn't currently know his first name. The strangers go up to the main floor and go to recover some stuff. And then when oh sorry, they don't put him to they don't put the hotel clerk to sleep. That's a thing from later. The hotel clerk comes to go clean out Murdoch's room and and encounters the strangers who then go on to put him to sleep then. And they're here to recover like a needle. We cut that we cut from there to a lounge singer who is we find out is Emma Murdoch, who gets a phone call from a guy claiming to be her husband's psychiatrist. And she talks to the psychiatrist and asks, and they have a talk. She mentions that she hasn't seen her husband for 3 weeks after he stormed off, and that the psychologist says to her that her husband has had a mental break, is lost all his memories, and if she comes into contact with him, that she should call him immediately so that so that he can come in and essentially help out Murdoch, um, Mr. Murdoch, we'll call him. We get a scene where the police have shown up to investigate the murder of the woman in Mr. Murdoch's room. He's being investigated by a detective Bumstead. Funny English name. Haha. Chuckles. We notice there's a different guy running the hotel counter. Talks the exact same way though. Curious. But yeah, he has a bit of a that's a thing. And then they go up to investigate the place. They notice that the murder has happened. He also notices, Bumstead also notices that there's a broken fishbowl and that the fish from the bowl is been put into the bathtub. And you notes it's curious that someone would who would kill a woman would save a goldfish, which I guess maybe. I'm not a detective. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know that's his thing. He also points out that this is the sixth murder like this. So yeah, we learned that apparently Bumstead is tracking a serial killer. And this is the latest of those killings. And the audience is left to wonder whether or not Murdoch is that killer. But it's being sowed in some doubt that maybe Murdoch isn't the killer. Who can say? As they're doing this, a guy runs in and is screaming, and and a couple of the other police officers drag him off. It's pointed out that this guy is called Walensky, and he is a former police detective who was investigating these murders and has gone insane. More details will come later. After they go back to the police station after this, and Mrs. Murdoch comes to the police station to file a missing persons report for her husband because apparently he is out running around, which is not something she was aware of. She had just thought that like he was mad, so he ran off, and she wasn't aware that he just wasn't anywhere. So she is instantly brought to Bumstead, who gets an update on what's going on here. Mr. Murdoch goes to the automat and retrieves his wallet. He tries to get some more answers out of the automat worker, who is because he doesn't know anything. So they do that, and he gets his wallet back. He is briefly accosted by some police who are just being pests because he walked in and out of the place. I don't know. But she is eventually convinced to a prostitute comes along and convinces the police officers to leave him alone, and so she invites him over to her place in order to make some money. In the meantime, he looks through his wallet and finds his first name, which is John, which is there's a very interesting thing from earlier in the movie where between the scene and the earlier ones he's in, where he's just like wandering in the street where he doesn't know what his deal is, and he's just trying to guess what his first name is, and he just like guesses like 8 different J names, and actually John's in there, so it's kind of a interesting little scene they got going on there. But yeah, he chats with her for a bit. She's but eventually leaves because he's trying to like test himself to see if he is the serial killer that he's been hearing about, because he had also heard some rumors about the serial killer being on the loose, and he is somewhat convinced that he is not the serial killer because he did not feel the instinct to kill somebody, although God knows what that instinct actually looks like. In the meantime, after this, John Murdoch is accosted by the strangers, who get into a fight with him. John manages to gets attacked by them. They try to put him to sleep. Doesn't initially work. They use some mental powers to break some things, and eventually this fight results in one of the strangers getting trapped under some broken equipment and getting the top of his head chopped off, killing him, which is accomplished when John appears to use some mental powers of his own, and causes the billboard they're standing on to collapse on top of this one of the strangers. One of the strangers remarks that he is queuing. I think that's what they call it, actually, right? Queuing. I'm gonna look into the
Uh, tuning.
tuning. Okay. Okay, I see
Yeah.
what the confusion here is. I was hearing like the U sound, and I kind of hung up on that. So yeah, tuning, which is essentially sci-fi mental powers. So yeah, it appears that John can also tune, which is a power that humans aren't supposed to possess, which we find a little bit. The guy that is killed is called Mr. Quick, because all these strangers are called Mr. something. Principally among them is a guy named Mr. Hand who is chasing him around. and is played by Richard O'Brien and is one of the main antagonists of the film. They have a renewed interest to capture John after this. Detective Bumstead drives Emma home and drops her off. She goes into her apartment and finds John is waiting there, and he asks her some questions, looking for answers, because he doesn't remember anything, which is in line with what his psychologist told her. She informs him that she had an affair with another man, and that had caused John to storm out. After this occasion, and Bumstead is found waiting for him outside, and that's result. And but John gets away at this point after because John runs away and uses his tuning powers to create a door, which allows him to go through an otherwise a dead end. John gets into a cab and asks the cabbie if he can take him to Shell Beach, and he's just like, "Oh, yeah, no, sorry, I can't remember where to go." After this incident, Bumstead goes to meet with Dr. Schreiber, to chat with him about what the condition is. This detective is and Bumstead is beginning to think that maybe John isn't the killer, but Schreiber's just like, yeah, I mean, no, I think he probably is. I mean, I'm a psychologist. I would know better than you, a police officer, which he actually might. I'm saying that like a joke, but in real life, yeah, most psychologists are going to have better reads on most people than police officers in theory. There are probably some exceptions on our side of that, but also a lot of cops just have like a very inflated idea of how much abilities they have to read on people. So after Bumstead leaves, Schreiber goes to a pool where he is chilling. He likes to chill here because the strangers don't bother him because they're afraid of water, which is it reveals that one of the strangers shows up and chases away a bunch of the other people in the pool, and they have some chat, and the stranger has a chat with Schreiber to like catch up on what happened. Schreiber was apparently in charge of doing something to John, which he didn't succeed in doing. And after that, one of the stranger who talks to him, Mister Hand, I believe it is, walks away. In the mean in the meantime, Frank Bumstead goes to go meet with what was his name? There's so many names, I'm getting them mixed up.
Was it Harris?
No, we're at Walensky. That's a
Carl
little bit
Harris?
later. Nope, this is a little bit later.
Oh,
That's a little bit later. This is Bumstead goes to meet up with Walensky, the crazy detective, because he figures that John has some or that Walensky might have some information on the killer because he's getting suspicious of whether or not John is the killer. Yeah, we also notice another reason he did this is because when they got some fingerprints off the items in the murder room where the murder had happened, the fingerprints were apparently perfect spirals, like we see on the that was drawn over the the victim's breasts, and also is plastered on the sides of Walensky's room where he is staying. Walensky tells Bumstead that there isn't actually a case. It's all a big joke, and eventually Bumstead goes away and just dismisses him. At this point, the clock hits midnight again, and or it's about to hit midnight again. And the strangers are the host. We see the rest of the strangers. It's a big darn cabal of these strangers, and they talk about how they're making stuff, and they're trying to find the human soul, and talking about like forging a human. And then and we get to demonstrate the stranger's power to everyone goes to sleep at midnight, and essentially they use that time when everyone goes to sleep to readjust the city and like rebuild it from scratch, or not from scratch, just to alter certain parts. And then occasionally they'll just like change people's lives, which John observes while everyone's asleep, because he stayed up during the sleepy time. And he sees the strangers take a poor couple who are in like a desperate situation, and they essentially take them, change their clothes, alter their house into a big mansion, and then stab them in the head with a little needle with these needles to give them the memories of being rich people. They also do this to their sleeping child, and then I suppose they reset the clock. This also explains the blood on John's forehead, as that's where they were injecting the memory needles. After this, John sees Schreiber going out of the house where they're doing this, and John interrogates the doctor, and he has a conversation. He's demanding answers. Schreiber is a bit resistant until John uses his tuning powers to knock Schreiber away, which is gets Schreiber to change his tune a little bit. And he's saying like, "Yeah, together we can stop them. You just need to like work with me." And he's an eventually, but John isn't really having that. And as the city wakes up, as the clock resets itself, John runs away. It's also pointed out that the strangers point out that Murdoch have another meeting, and they talk about how Murdoch is becoming too powerful. They had some doubts about him having the power to tune initially, and those have been dismissed. Mr. Hand agrees to be imprinted with all of Murdoch's memories in order to become more powerful and like better understand him, so they can catch him faster. They note that this is a risky process, but Mr. Hand pulls through. John Murdoch gets the idea that he could call Carl Harris from the postcard, and calls up Carl, who turns out to be his uncle, and they go, and he decides to go out there to go meet his uncle. Mr. Hand goes to check out the prostitute that John had visited earlier to try to get some information, but this doesn't go anywhere. So Mr. Hand ends up killing the prostitute, because it turns out the gist of what they were trying to do to John initially was they were trying to turn him into a serial killer. So what they did when they imprinted Mr. Hand with all of John's memories was they injected John with the memories of a serial killer, thereby making him a serial killer, because he has all the internalized logic of a serial killer in his body now. So yay, they've done that. In the meantime, John tries to go to Shell City, just trying to take different trains, trying to get to the Shell City. It doesn't end up working. He asks a few directions a few times, doesn't end up working. And Walensky shows up and talks to John, and is just like, "Hey, you're trying to get to Shell City? Good luck with that. You're not going to be able to do it. They're going to keep looking for you, just like they're looking for me. And they're never going to stop." And then Walensky jumps in front of his train because he's scared of the strangers. And yeah, that's pretty disturbing. But anyway, after that, John decides to go to his uncle's house. Emma wanders out by the dock where she had apparently met John. Mr. Hand goes to talk to her and is mimicking a lot of John's memories, and he in fact just says, "Oh yeah, you met your husband here? I met my wife here. We have so much in common." As he gets ready to kidnap her, John goes out to Uncle Carl's place, and it's out of an aquarium. So yeah, they have a whole thing. So they have some conversations. Emma goes to confront the prostitute that John had met up with, and finds her dead. And yeah, that's when she gets kidnapped. John has some conversations about Carl about his past. John is informed that his parents died in an accident, and that Carl raised them for most of his life, and that he also has like he's showing a bunch of pictures, and there's one where John, as a teenager, has a scar on his arm, which John doesn't currently have. So that's a bit of a problem. It's at this point that John basically realizes that his entire life is a lie, that this is all nothing, none of this exists. And he's just starting to act strange, but Carl is sort of stirred by this. Emma calls Bumstead to go check out the murder victim. She's wandering through this, and they're having a conversation about this. And eventually, Emma finds the prostitute's daughter, who we saw earlier in the movie, and is hiding under the bed, and has drawn a picture of three pale men in hats having killed her mom. So this is the first definitive proof that John didn't kill somebody. As they're driving, Bumstead responds that he hasn't really can't really remember his past too good. And this is John Bumstead's main character. One of his character traits is that he's really good at noticing details. He notices a couple things earlier where Emma is like fiddling with her wedding ring, and he says, "Oh, how long have you been married?" And she's just like 4 years, and he's like, "Huh, that's strange. You don't seem like you're used to your wedding ring," which I guess you get used to it after several years. Sorry, I'm just trying to get reoriented here.
This is quite frankly a longer movie. In all fairness, I think the
Yeah,
total runtime was what, 2 hours?
hour 51. Still pretty long. It's also like a
I
detective
was
plot,
rounding
so
up.
it's very complicated.
Fair enough.
Yeah, lots of twists and turns. At this point, the night happens again, where everyone goes to sleep, and John has to have another combat with Mr. Hand. It's pretty effective. It's a pretty neat fight. In the fight, Mr. Hand reveals that the strangers are using dead humans as vessels, which is why when Mr. Quick was killed earlier, a little snake energy thing popped out of the head. So that's the real thing, and that's also why they're pale, is because these are corpses that they're just piloting around. Eventually, as the strangers are like moving around the building, John manages to get one of them trapped in between two of the buildings as they smush them, as they smush one of them together. John John is starting to fall, and he gets confronted by one of the other misters, which is a child, which is very scary. And the child bites down on his hand so that he can fall. It's and after During this, the day starts again. How this seems to be working is that essentially they're experiencing the few hours between like nightfall and midnight, and then after that they reset everything. But I guess everyone in the city is nocturnal, literally. But yeah, it's to this point like several days would have passed, and no one's done anything during the day. John starts to get surrounded by the strangers, but Inspector Bumstead pulls up in his car and gets him to come along with him and saves him. But I mean, he's a police officer, so he saves him to throw him right into an interrogation cell. So they have it. So Bumstead and John finally have a proper meeting and have a discussion about what's going on. John Bumstead tries to see if he's involved with the murders, and John's just like, yeah, none of this is real. Somewhat parroting what Walensky says, and just brings up other things. He asks Bumstead if he knows the way to Shell Beach, like he had done to the cabbie earlier. Bumstead's not able to answer. He asks Bumstead, when was the last time you remember doing something in the daytime, and stuff like that. He also, and like it brings up these various contradictions because these people are being living through like essentially the same hours of night every for how God knows how long, and they have a whole thing. Bumstead reacts sort of angrily at him, and eventually John uses his tuning powers to levitate the book, a book that he has with him, which was a book of like his childhood drawings, which was initially blank, but has now appeared with pictures. After this interrogation, Bumstead gives him a break, and John goes to have one of those conversations with Emma through like prison glass, where like there's a phone cord on each side of it, and there's a little pane of glass between them, and Emma's apologizing. She's saying she doesn't think John killed those people, and yeah, again, she apologizes for the affair, and John's just like, you don't have to apologize. There was no affair. None of this is real. They're just like putting memories in us and like having us react from those. Which is why John's not a serial killer now, is because didn't kill those people. For all we know, all like it's entirely possible that this whole scenario is like concocted from memories. Like Bumstead, Emma, John, they all would have had their memories put out. So like there was no first 5 murders. This was the first one, and he just has memories of 5 other murders, or like however many murders. We don't know. It's not totally clear whether or not John had, or like John in that previous like had any of those serial killer memories in him at all. So we have no idea. It seems like there was some of that because Walensky knows about the crimes. Although that could also be explained by Walensky. Walensky's deal was that he wasn't falling asleep either. So he essentially might have had Bumstead's old job. But yeah, there's a lot of, that's maybe a bit of a plot issue, but yeah, I think that's also perfectly like intentional vagueness. I think it's perfectly fine. But at some point, when Dr. Scriber was working with John at the beginning, they didn't complete. They mentioned that he woke up halfway through getting the new memories in, which which erased all his memories, so he doesn't know anything, or at least he only has like language skills and skills. Amnesia, notably in the real world, doesn't necessarily work like this. It's a lot of complications. Although, yeah, there's a pretty good video from the Overly Sarcastic podcast on amnesia plots, which brings up a lot of the issues with them, which I recommend you look at. But anyway, so they're having this conversation, and they say they love each other, and John uses his tuning powers to break the glass in between them so they can share a big fancy kiss. Which, yeah, that's a pretty pro move. Good work. That's a neat, evocative image. I like it. After this, Bumstead is told about Walensky's death. The strangers arrive and like erase some people's memories to go claim John, but John has already escaped from his cell. At this point, Murdoch and Bumstead go to find Schreiber because they're both pretty thoroughly convinced that something's wrong here. So they get some information out of that. Schreiber hands John a syringe and says if he injects himself in with it, he'll have all the answers. But they refuse to do that. So John and Bumstead go to force Dr. Schreiber to take them to Shell Beach. So they do it. They have to take like a boat, like a rowboat, and go across the water. They go into a building, during we cut away from this for a bit for Mr. Hand to kidnap Emma because they're going to grab her so that they can erase her memories and turn her into someone called Anna, essentially. But first, they have another thing they need to do with her. Yeah, essentially, they explain a bit more. Dr. Schreiber says that they were going to, that essentially they're trying to, they're erasing people's memories over and over again so they can find out what the human soul is to try to figure out, essentially, if you can, like, change somebody's like soul by like changing their memories. um it's not a it's weird. It's hard to like say this is a sensical way to do things. I mean, it's also moon logic, so, or like strange alien stuff, so it's like it's a very 60ish sci-fi plot. Granted, good 60s sci-fi plot, but I don't know. The plot of always like trying to find the human soul is always a bit strange. They say they're doing the they Schreiber says the strangers are doing this so that they can solve some problem with themselves where they're like dying out, but that's always like a super vague explanation and it's not like the strongest thing in the world. But yeah, they were essentially going to change the memory. They're trying to change his memories to see if he'll go along with it. And obviously, that does have some strange things, like the example with Emma not being used to her wedding ring. That's a strange. That's a challenging. That's a challenge of this experiment. As like you can change somebody's like mind, but you're not necessarily changing their body or ideally their soul, I guess. But it's not also clear how long the strangers have been doing this. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, I guess there would have had to been like a catalyst, and the catalyst was ultimately John Murdoch's like injection of the head at the start of the movie that kind of spiraled to events of the movie. But yeah, you're saying ultimately that you don't know there's a start to it, so how long they've been doing it, like that's getting into some weird Inception levels of like how far we can see past the movie itself.
yeah, there's like the only clue about the length of this whole experiment has been like Dr. Schreiber tells us his backstory is that he had been kidnapped from the original place, had all his memories replaced, but kept all his skills. Also, like all his emotions. So he's emotionally stunted to a degree. Although to a degree, he still
I guess
clearly has
arguably you could
emotions. Yeah.
say
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that you could definitely make a case for like 3 weeks prior to the main characters um step out of the I don't know the uh sleeping world at that point in time would be the start of the movie.
Yeah.
Um but arguably you could also say that like earlier than that because there was the crazy detective that acknowledges that he was an alien long before like I guess the movie even really started like so I mean it just keeps on going back and going back and going back. It's like I don't know,
The upper limit would
10
seemingly
years maybe?
be
20
yeah,
years?
the upper limit would seemingly be like how old is Schreiber? Because he would have had to get these skills. His skill set is essentially he knows how to like isolate human memories. So say conservatively, like best case scenario, 30 years to get all those skills. He is I don't know how long old is Kiefer Sutherland. Kiefer Sutherland was born in '66. This movie's '99, so he's or '98. So he's 28 in this scene. He's actually younger than I thought he was, but he could conceivably be like I think this character could conceivably be in the '60s, but even that's assuming like that the strangers don't have technology to like extend his life. This could go back God knows how long. Like we see a flashback where like Schreiber appears to be like the same age, but I mean, that's a flashback. Also, like, why bother with the makeup even? Doesn't matter. He also says that no one has any memory of like where the original place was. We can presume Earth, but we don't know. These could be like Star Trek aliens where they're like exactly the same as humans, but yeah, they take Schreiber takes them Bumstead and John to a building where there's just a empty room with a billboard, and they decide to rip through the billboard to Schreiber's protests, and then start grabbing hammers and pickaxes, which they get from somewhere, and chopping their way through the door. And eventually they break open the wall to reveal the outside of the city, which is space. This is a giant space station, apparently, foreshadowed by the night sky at the beginning of the movie, which I thought was kind of cheeky. No, it's a kind of a pretty disturbing looking actually. And at that point, the strangers show up. Bumstead shoots a couple of them and ends up getting into a fight with one of them. They both tumble out the wall into space, and both those characters die. Mr. Hand throws up a knife to Emma's throat and says if John doesn't submit, he'll kill her, which John agrees to submit, and they put him to sleep successfully. And they send off Emma to get reprogrammed, essentially. They take John to their underground stranger base. They notably have to put him back to sleep again in order to get him there. The strangers have some conversations saying that that John has evolved. Several of the strangers say they should kill him, but the leader, Mr. Book, says no, we need to like learn from him. We're gonna shut the experiment down, and we're going to imprint John with us so that he can become more similar, and that will maybe save us somehow. I don't know. This is a weakness of this sort of plot, honestly, of like, oh, alien tries to find human soul and recover from their unspecified speciesological stagnation. I don't know. I'd never understand this plot ever of like them just saying like, oh, this species is just going to die out eventually, and it's never really explained properly. Like, I think there's like a counterexample of like,
Yeah,
yeah, there's an episode of Star Trek Enterprise which actually gets that all right. The episode's still trash, but I've only ever seen this real nailed once.
I was gonna say there was a couple of good like examples of this done in an episode of Lucifer where it's revealed that what the character is based around one of the main characters' ex-husbands, and he ends up in what's called a hell loop that just keeps on repeating, and it shows like ultimately that the character's in hell and just reliving like his shittiest moments in his life, and then he wakes up again and he's back in the hell loop. It's one of those ones that if you did like a repeating cycle, it would be a lot cooler, but then all of a sudden they cut it off and it's not exactly an
Yeah,
infinite loop per se.
yeah, it's not even strictly a loop because the people that aren't in this experiment just seem to continue what they were doing, seemingly so the strangers can do a bunch of different experiments at once. But yeah, they're observing a lot, but they're only like adjusting like a few people every night.
Yeah.
So they tell Schreiber to do the injection, but he instead decides to take the syringe that he had given John earlier from inside John's coat pocket and do that as the injection. It turns out that injection is essentially a training module for all his tuning powers. It explains how essentially like giving him a giant flash course on like everything he needs to know to master his tuning powers. Eventually, the strangers figure out what Schreiber's done, but by the time they've start to do something about it, it's too late, and John is woken up with now godlike power of the strangers on his side. He gets into a massive telekinetic battle with Mr. Book, and eventually it ends with Mr. Book getting a knife shoved into his chest and then thrown, and then get uh, Mr. Book gets thrown through a water tower, which he was. These creatures are called aquaphobic, so that apparently destroys him. Yeah, and he also
Yeah,
points out. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I didn't really care for that part because like earlier on in the film, Schreiber's character, the doctor's character says that they're like they don't visit him in the whatchamacallit. It's just way too much foreshadowing that ultimately like the water's gonna play a big part in this final boss fight, and they kind of ruined it.
Yeah. Also, like I read aquaphobic as like, okay, you don't like damp spaces, like just as like a like that's perfectly serviceable. Of like, okay, this is what I do this so they don't bother me. I didn't read it as like this is their like kryptonite or whatever. Although maybe that's just a
No,
coincidence. I
but
don't know.
but
Yeah.
later on he repeats it to John Murdoch, and he switches it, the wording. I guess what you're saying is kind of correct. He says they don't seem to like water. In fact, they almost seems like they fear it or something along those lines, or
Yeah.
they're hurt by it or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording they used, but at that point, and I'm like, fuck you, that's just lazy writing. You're just gonna utilize that later on as a way to write yourself an out instead of just making it a little bit more of like a battle at the end where the main character doesn't know the villain's weakness. So I don't know.
So after Mr. Book is defeated, John says to Schreiber he's going to go find Emma, and Schreiber informs him that Emma has been changed into Anna, so Emma no longer has her memories, and that all the old memories have been destroyed in the battle, or as soon as Mr. Book said to shut it all down. Maybe one of those happened, but John decides, okay, well, he's going to go, and he makes Shell Beach by giving the floating city space station a ring of water, and then like making like a port outside of it, which has also exposed to sunlight and atmosphere. And Anna goes to that play, or the woman who was Emma, now Anna, goes to that place, and John goes to go chat with her and starts to hit it off with her. And they wander out into the sunset, or into the uh, over to the beach to go renew their love, I guess. And that's pretty well the end of the movie. He also has a conversation with Mr. Hand and says he was looking for the human soul in the wrong place, which I don't know. I've said my bit about that. It's all like yeah. I don't know how much quality you can get out of these searching for the human soul plots necessarily. I think they're really hard to pull off successfully. Though that's maybe just me. Yeah, so that's the movie. I actually quite like it. It sounds like I'm really down on it. Maybe that's just because I was in like a sour mood, but I like it today rather than when I watched the movie yesterday or whatever. But I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I like it better than The Crow, which I said was Preuss's other big famous film. I don't know. What do you think?
It was definitely different. Like I'm
Yeah.
not a big fan of like the neo-noir
Hmm.
genre, and I think this incorporated enough of the sci-fi into it that it held my attention a lot better. Some of the effects in it were kind of uh, very indicative of the late 1980 or 1990s.
Yeah,
Like
they're kind of dated.
It didn't like completely ruin my immersion or anything, but it definitely didn't help me at all. But yeah, it was definitely these guys were also really creepy. The main villains and the fact that they had that little kid dressed up as one of them was uh especially creepy.
I'm gonna
Like
try
it
to figure out which one that is.
I mean they didn't exactly like do a whole lot of like costume designs for these characters. They just basically white-faced them.
Yeah, and gave him all the same outfit.
Was he not Mr. Sleep?
Ooh,
Like, am I crazy in saying that?
that might be it. You might be right, because it's one of the few names left. Images. Yep, yep. The kid is Mr. Sleep, I think. Mr. Sleep, played by Satya Gumbert, who I guess is a twin, who's his double, I guess.
Once again, it's 1998. I would
Or
really hate to try and sit down and watch the second movie
oh, it's just a short film. It's not a
in
whole
this
movie.
series because yeah, I know, but like he's like I want to make a whole thing of this. And I mean it'd kind of be cool to see where he went. I mean,
Yeah,
arguably he had like 10 years to try and figure out how to piece this together. I just don't know if he could pull it off after he kind of I don't know. Once again, by the end of the movie, it got convoluted,
yeah. There's a lot.
and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like it definitely kind of had its moments. So
Yeah, oh yeah. It's good. I don't think I think a lot of the criticism that's like, oh, the plot's not very like is the plot like amazing? I don't think the plot falls flat though. I think I follow with. It's just it's well crafted, but it's not the best. The film looks pretty good. The effects are dated, but it's done in a way that like you don't really it doesn't really bother you. Like it's done like it's one of those films that like it's dated effects, but it's used in a way that works, sort of.
also it does really incorporate the neo-noir feel to it. Like all of
Yeah.
the scenes are fairly dark. I had to legit like turn up the brightness on my screen because some of these scenes were so dark that I was
Hmm.
having troubles making them out, like watching it while in bed. So like that's how hard it was to be able to pinpoint some stuff. But
Yeah, there's a
I
lot
also
of black.
pirated off the internet.
Yeah. I mean, I bought it on Blu-ray, so
Yeah, here was my argument for it though. I wanted to watch it and it wasn't on YouTube. It
yeah.
was on Amazon Prime,
Oh.
but they were only trying to buy it from Amazon Prime, and they're charging
Ah.
like $15 for it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna take this off the internet.
Yeah, no, I had an inkling I'd like it, so I ended up actually buying it.
You would think if it was a short film and that they were uh re-releasing it out on Blu-ray. I guess I don't know when they tried to do the re-release, but you'd think if there was another part of it that they would at least try and throw it in on the Blu-ray version. So
Yeah, it's almost I mean, I don't think the Blu-ray's from 2021.
2008. Sorry, I just found it because I was looking at the home media release. Apparently, um,
Neil Gaiman has a review of this movie on the DVD on the Blu-ray. Weird. Yeah, I don't know what year this Blu-ray's from. Yeah, what do you give it for a rating?
I guess like a little bit towards the end. Not that I stopped following it. It's just
Yeah.
kind of um, fell short to what I was hoping it would accumulate to. I don't know exactly what I wanted to accumulate to. That's just such a weird. I'm gonna give it like an 8 out of 10 because I know I've got some quips with it, but like honestly, it wasn't awful and it wasn't. I don't know spectacular. I guess
I don't reasonably know how it could be better. but it's pretty good. It's a fun ride. I don't really have like a big quibble with it at any point. Yeah, I'm kind of on the 8 out of 10 track too. But yeah, so that's the episode. Next, because I had like a inkling to do this, we're gonna do Darkman, straight into another dark
Not a
movie.
clue.
Yeah, Darkman. It stars Liam Neeson.
It remotely sounds familiar, but
Yeah, it's around. There were
uh,
like 3 sequels. But yeah, I think that's the episode. We'll do that. I'll try to get it out before have a happy new year, by the way.
yeah,
It's yeah, yeah.
we are. I wouldn't say way behind. We're just behind. I got like
I don't know.
bronchitis there for like a week,
Yeah.
and I'm
Um
still not feeling like 100%.
yeah, I'm also sort of getting laid off too, so I'm not in like the best of moods a lot of the time. So but yeah, next week
Fair
Dark
enough.
Man. Hopefully it's all right. Have a happy new year. Hopefully 2023 is going to be the first might be the first good year of the 20s, hopefully, maybe. I don't know.
No,
No. No, probably not.
no, I
No.
don't think so.
I think we need another one at least.
The war in the Ukraine's still going on. Like
Oh
COVID
yeah.
variants are starting to become more big.
Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast is becoming a shittier company.
Yeah, no, it's probably not. I think we need to get another one out of this.
The TV show Velma became the most hated thing in the
Yeah,
whole
that was
entire like. I didn't want to bring it up, but like honestly, I am so surprised that for some reason that got a lower score than Dragon Ball Z Evolution.
huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
People really like their Velma, I guess.
Well, I mean Vox Machina comes out in 2 weeks or in like 3 days, so that's fun.
Uh, 3 days
3
on the
days, yeah.
19th.
Yeah, yeah.
I do you know if Amazon like dumps their products onto the internet or do they
I think it's all one jump.
slow release it?
I think it's all one drop. I think.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I will binge that.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna I might start watching the original Star Wars tonight. I've been going my way I've been spending my time going through these Star Wars movies.
Also, apparently The Last of Us came out the other night and I should probably check that out just cuz I wouldn't say I enjoyed the games. I got through like the first stage and then I went eh and then I quit playing the games. Like they're really good games apparently, but I just didn't have the attention span to get through the tutorial stages essentially.
They're like a lot of Naughty Dog products in that like they're really fun, but they're not like as revolutionary as they'd probably like them to be. I know The Last of Us 2 did some
Um,
really good stuff with um accessibility stuff, so that's always nice.
yeah, and it's one of those topics that I don't really want to talk too heavily on because once again, I really haven't played through the games,
Yeah.
so I can't really judge the quality of the games without playing through them. So,
That was I bought that game new, like The Last of Us. Like when that game came out on PS3,
uh-huh.
I bought that new as like my
Did
first
you play through it?
Oh yeah.
Did you cry?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I have like games never made me cry, I don't think.
Oh, that's fair enough. And I mean, it's like 15 minutes where you're supposed to build an emotional character or emotional connection with this main character that's like in the game for like maybe 3 minutes, and then like the rest of the game's all about like you mourning this character, and you're like,
Yeah. I mean,
I've seen
yeah.
this relationship for like 2 minutes, right? And I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who actually hasn't seen it or
I don't think the
is gonna start it or
endings I don't think the endings like the type of thing to make you cry either. I don't know. I have a very
yeah.
like I think Imitation of Life I kind of get close to sometimes crying. That's a movie, but That's my if any movie's my cry movie, it's that one. And that's also just one of my favorite
Yeah,
probably
I've
the
got
best.
nothing.
Yeah, that's like that's like the best movie of all time in my
I
opinion. So,
I am emotionally dead inside, so
no, that's also
anyways.
yeah. Anyway, see you guys soon with Dark Man. Bye.